Good morning. Welcome to the third legislative forum in a series of three being sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Johnson County during the 2022 Iowa legislative session. My name is Duha Tuil, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, and I will be moderating today. Our timekeeper for today is Janet Wall, also a League member. The League is dedicated to educating voters on political and ballot issues. We encourage informed citizen participation in government. Membership is open to all people, regardless of genders, age 16 and older. We invite you to join us. We could use your time, your talent, and your financial support for our ongoing operations. To learn more, speak to one of our members or reach out to us through our website or Facebook page. These forums are designed to give local citizens an opportunity to discuss current state legislative issues with their elected officials while the legislative session is underway. All Johnson County legislators were invited to participate in today's forum. Senator Kevin Kenney, District 39, Zach Walls, District 37, Senator Kevin Kenney, District 39, Representative David Jacoby, District 74, and Representative Bobby Kaufman, District 73, are unable to join us today. Today's forum focuses on issues related to social justice. Co-sponsors for today are LULAC Council 308, Johnson County Affordable Housing Coalition, Iowa Shares, Johnson County Interfaith Coalition, Iowa Civil Liberties Council, and the Center for Worker Justice. I would like to introduce our legislators. Joe Bulka, District 43, and Zach Walls, District 37. Our representatives, Mary Masher, District 86, Amy Nielsen, District 77, and Christina Bohannon, District 85. We will start the forum with 3-minute summaries from each of our legislators on recent legislative matters of interest to them individually, starting with Senator Bulka, representing District 43. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you. I'm going to use my time this morning to thank the League of Women Voters for bringing us together for so many years. This is going to be, I think, probably one of the last League of Women Voter forums I'm going to be attending as a Johnson County elected official for the past 30 years. And I can tell you from the moment I got involved in Johnson County elected office and was an elected official, the League of Women Voters have been an active, vibrant part of engaging our democracy. And I'm going to name a few people that if you go back 30 years or maybe even 20 years or even 10 years, you'll recognize some of these folks. But when I started in elected office, I interacted with Pat Jensen and Carol Spaziani and Jean Lakin and Linda Levy and Lolly Eggers and Ann Boberg and Linda Schreiber and Nancy Lynch and Ann Spencer and Barbara Herring and many others. And starting on the Johnson County Board of Supervisors, I felt like I was babysat by the League of Women Voters, who back in the mid 90s was interested in transparency in county government. And here we are today with this forum focused on state public policy issues. I also want to say congratulations and thank you to Representative Mary Masher, who will also be, this may be one of her last League of Women Voters official spring forums as an elected official. Nobody has done more for Johnson County kids, Johnson County's public education than Representative Masher. And I just want to publicly again thank her for being such a dear colleague but such a fierce advocate for people in Johnson County and surrounding areas. And I want to finally say we have a bunch of really great candidates that are running for these seats in Johnson County. And we're excited about that. We're going to have some fantastic primary. So good luck to all of them. And we still have, our existing delegation. I see Representative Nielsen. I know others have conflicts today. And we're joined by Senator Zach Walz, who's become a terrific new leader of our caucus, the Senate Democrats, and is working. You can't believe how hard he's working literally every day to make it better for our team and to win some seats. And I know this is not a partisan operation this morning, but Senator Walz is going to do some really, really great things for Democrats and for our state. So I'll stop with that. There's plenty of issues to talk about. But again, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for making our democracy strong, especially now as we face so many threats out there around us. So thanks so much. I look forward to people's questions, and thanks for joining.
Thank you, Senator Bulka. Representative Mary Masher, District 86.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you again to the League and our sponsors this morning. I do appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words, Joe. We're going to miss you too. And I know you're still going to be around, and we're looking forward to seeing what you're going to do in your next chapter as well. So thanks, everyone. We do have a great coalition of Democrats from Johnson County, and our folks are leaders in many of the committee work, and obviously with Zach in the Senate and Amy in the House and Dave Jacoby and Christina running for Congress. We've got people that have really stepped up and are doing the work. We're glad Kevin's running again in the Iowa County and that new district for the Senate. And we just have a good group of people. And I just wanted to give a shout out to all of them because you are well represented in the State House, and I just wanted to thank them as well. I wanted to start off with some really fun news. I had the City High Jazz Band come to the State House this week, and they were in the Capitol on Monday morning in the House chamber, and they performed for over an hour. And talk about bringing smiles to people's faces. We need some uplifting things going on, right? And these students were amazing. It was a group of 25 students from City High, and it's their elite jazz band. And they were absolutely phenomenal. And again, represented our community so well. And I look again at how important the arts are in our schools and why we need to continue those programs. And again, giving those students an outlet like that. They enjoyed the day, and I know that City High and the city school, our school district, should be really proud of the students that are working in our schools and are getting their degrees and going on to college. I think there are many of them, whether it's community college or four-year colleges, are working really hard to do the right thing. So thank you. I'm going to stop there, and I'm looking forward to your questions today. And I have lots of things to share in terms of legislation we're working on. Our big job right now is the budget. And I just wanted to mention that obviously shows stark differences between Democrats and Republicans because their priorities oftentimes are not ours. And we can talk more about that when we get to that portion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Masher. Senator Zach Walz of District 37.
Well, good morning, everybody. State Senator Zach Walz. I represent the west side of Iowa City, all of Coralville, rural Johnson County going up to Solon, and currently represent Cedar County to the east and Walton down in Muscatine County. Following the redistricting process, I will be representing North Liberty, and I will be losing Cedar County and Muscatine County. So I'll be taking those over from Senator Kinney, but really look forward to working with Representative Nielsen to represent that community and to continuing to work with Representative Jacoby on representing Coralville and the west side of Iowa City. And I'll also be picking up the neighborhood of Manville Heights in kind of the north and west side there of Iowa City. Words can't really fully express how much we're going to miss Joe and Mary. I don't want this to be purely a goodbye tour this morning, but Joe, you've just been an incredible mentor, friend, partner, and we're going to miss you a lot. I know that you're only going to be a phone call away, but we're going to miss you every single day in the legislature. Everybody who's ever seen me and Representative Masher on Zooms probably already knows that she's been an important role model for me since I was literally a child. So Mary, we're going to do our best to continue your advocacy and work for the young people here in not just our community, but across the state of Iowa to carry that torch. But it will certainly not be easy. And but we wish you all the best in your time here after the legislature. As both Joe and Mary mentioned, there's going to be a lot for us to talk about this morning, whether it's some of the tax policy that's happening, whether it's some of the outstanding issues concerning the bottle bill or I will and the local option sales tax that are out there. And we can certainly get to those. But I also wanted to just take a brief moment to underscore how special it is that we get to do exactly what we're doing this morning, and that we get to have the participation of everyday citizens talking with their lawmakers and holding them accountable and asking questions as we're watching what's unfolding today in Ukraine and the assault on lowercase d democratic values in that country by the Russian Federation. I think all of us should just take a moment to appreciate how important and how much we value the democratic process, and just remind ourselves that we can't take it for granted because the exact same forces that ultimately culminated in the invasion of Ukraine, those forces are present in this country. And for the moment, they are certainly in the minority, the small minority, but it requires an actively engaged citizenry, each and every one of us every single day, to continue to fight for those values, to talk about why those values are important, and to safeguard them here in this country. So I'm excited to be here this morning and looking forward to the questions and the conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Senator Zach Walls. Representative Amy Nielsen, District 77. Are you on mute, Representative?
Sure was. Thank you. You'd think I would be better at this by now, but I just wanted to also echo everyone else with how much we are going to miss Joe and Mary. Both of them have been just wonderful mentors to me and helped me learn so much. And, especially when there was very little time to learn so much. Coming into the legislature is definitely like drinking from a fire hose. And without the guidance and support of people like Joe and Mary, it really would be impossible for new people to come in and end up being successful. So I definitely want to say thank you to the both of them. We will miss you, and I am definitely not looking forward to all of the questions you are going to have for us as private citizens, because they're going to be very, very pointed questions, I'm sure, and I'm really going to have to learn up on things before I talk to you guys next year. I am working very closely on the House's version of the new bottle bill. I believe that we're hoping next week there will be some negotiation between the House and the Senate, and we may be able to get something put together that we can agree on and hopefully get to each chamber's floor for a vote. We did a lot of debating this past week, and the House passed a lot of pretty bad stuff. And so I'm sure we'll get into all of that as we continue here this morning. And I just look forward to all of your questions.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for your updates on legislative issues. At this time, we will begin questions, starting with one from the League and one from each co-sponsor, followed by questions from members of the audience. Audience members are invited to enter their questions into the chat at any time, and you guys can go ahead and do that literally at any time, starting from now. We remind all participants that questions are limited to 1 minute. Please observe this time limit so that legislators can address as many questions as possible. Legislators, please limit your responses to 2 minutes. All legislators are welcome to join in responding to each question. So The first one is going to be the lead question. So here it goes. House File 2438 was moved to appropriations, which keeps it alive past the second funnel and makes various changes related to public assistance programs under the Department of Human Services, DHS. In the proposed bill, there seem to be many additional bureaucratic steps to get services approved. Please comment on this bill and how it might impact individuals who need these services.
This is Senator Bulka. I'll go ahead and start. This has been a bill that's been around for a while. I believe it's a Jason Schultz bill on verification of eligibility for people on food stamps, among other things. It's pretty mean-spirited. We have a really good eligibility system now that makes sure that people that deserve and qualify for benefits like food stamps get those food stamps, and the Department of Human Services is actually working to improve the system. So I think the bill is unnecessary. I don't have a good sense at this point whether we're going to waste time on it or in terms of like spending more time debating whether it goes forward. It's been out there for several years, and the Republicans have, even some Republicans are not thinking it's a bill that ought to be done. So I think it remains to be seen what will happen between now and adjournment.
And I'll just comment that that's my hope too, is that we don't take it up. Just because something is on the unfinished business calendar doesn't automatically imply that it will be debated. I don't think they have the votes to do it right now. And I think that's what's going on in the House Republican Party, is they're having those negotiations or discussions. And oftentimes we see bills that obviously don't have the support that get pulled from the calendar. And that happens all the time when they discuss them within their caucus and realize they don't have the votes on the floor. They won't get Democratic votes for it, as you can well imagine. Joe's right, they're just mean-spirited. I don't know why there's this vendetta against poor people, but obviously those folks who are struggling to put food on the table for their families and to make a living don't need the state government coming down on them and trying to shame them and make them feel as though they're less than because they can't afford the food they need for their own families. So I am hopeful that that bill will not move forward. It is just really and truly a mean-spirited piece of legislation.
The only thing that I would add to that is that essentially with the bill does just two things, if I'm recalling correctly from our debate on this topic last year. The first one is that it creates some new guidelines for evaluating eligibility to make sure that the people who are receiving these funds are folks who actually qualify for them. There were some challenges, as Senator Bulka alluded to, in the last couple of years, where there were, it was not that folks who needed help weren't getting the support. It was that there were actual, criminals out there who were trying to abuse our system. But as Senator Bulka mentioned, the department is undertaking action to prevent that kind of fraud from taking place. What was not happening was folks who, kind of everyday people, normal people, trying to take advantage of the system. That wasn't what was happening. There was organized criminal activity, but that's being addressed separately. The other thing that the bill does is that it creates essentially, it raises the requirements to be able to qualify for this assistance. And one of the challenges with that is that if you think about folks who need this kind of assistance from the state, it's typically because they've lost a source of income, they've been laid off, or have experienced some kind of an accident that prevents them from working, or their hours have been slashed, or for whatever reason the case may be. However, the bill would also create a new asset test where essentially if you have an asset, for example, a car that's worth, say $2,000, you would not qualify for that assistance, and you would be forced to potentially sell your car before you could qualify for this assistance. But if you sell your car, it can make it a lot harder to get to work. So it's a very short-sighted bill that would create real challenges to the implementation of the program and would undercut the spirit of the program, which is to help folks who need a hand, not force them to sell down their entirety of their assets before they're able to put food on the table.
Thank you. Thank you from all our legislators. Now, questions from co-sponsors. So we're going to go ahead and start with the Johnson County Affordable Housing with Sarah Barron asking the question.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me or hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So my question today is about housing, obviously, and I want to talk about private equity firms. We've started seeing across the state a continued growth in private equity firms who are ransacking our affordable housing stock. We have landlords and property owners who are very well organized in effectively lobbying against legislation that would protect tenants, and in fact have rolled back tenant protections even further. So my question for you today is, what messages, if any, do you think that would be most effective in calling on all of our state legislators to engage in work that's needed to protect Iowans from that encroachment on our housing affordability?
Hey, good morning, Sarah. I can try and take a quick crack at that. In terms of messages that speak to lawmakers, I certainly think that talking about the impact this is going to have on their constituents, every single lawmaker represents people who depend on affordable housing sources and who are being priced out of the market because of these exact forces that you just alluded to. Unfortunately, the challenge is not, at least from my perspective, that there's a lack of interest among rank and file members, Democrats and Republicans alike, on this issue. The problem is that the Republican Party is led by people who have essentially been captured by these lobbyists and their political action committees. And those Republican political leaders have told their rank and file members, including people like my friend Representative Brian Losey, who has done some really good work trying to move this ball forward, that unless those industry groups and their political action committees and lobbyists sign off on these proposed reforms, they will not be brought to the floor for a vote. This issue has been a very eye-opening experience for me, and maybe I came in a little bit naive, but I really believe that if there was good bipartisan work to try and find middle ground compromise, that we would be able to put in place common sense protections that would level the playing field to make sure that residents and landlords were being treated fairly on both sides. That is not what has happened. After an exhaustive process in 2019 and 2020 of trying to bring Democrats and Republicans together, Republican leadership spiked those bills despite having strong groups of bipartisan legislators on both the Senate side and the House side, because they have been bought off by powerful political action committees and their lobbyists. And so I wish I had better news for you, but that's my read of where we are at the moment.
Mary Masher?
Thank you. I was just going to comment that the one bill that we did this year to help and support tenants, especially those who are in apartments, it came from our university students, and they had worked on this for a number of years, where it's a housing checklist. And it isn't mandatory, but what it allows a student to do, or any individual, is when they move into an apartment, there's a checklist on things that are broken or need to be repaired. And then again, there can be pictures taken and identified so that when they move out, they aren't charged for things that they didn't do. And a lot of times we have unscrupulous landlords, I certainly don't believe all of them are, but some that charge students for things that they didn't damage in the first place and that students couldn't even get the landlords to fix or repair. So again, things like that are helpful. But Sarah, yesterday when we were on the Affordable Housing Coalition call, one of the comments was allowing some of our folks that live in manufactured homes the opportunity to buy land and to be able to own land as a corporation or a group. And then they're the ones who are in charge of the park. And there are efforts to do that more throughout the state and in other states as well. But again, giving people that power over their own destiny is what we need to be able to provide. And obviously, those are things that are opportunities for us. Affordable housing is extremely important, especially when it comes for the working poor who have a very difficult time being able to find places to live and work that are affordable in the community where they work. So those are some things that I was excited to hear on the call, and I'm hoping that we can pursue some of that within our community. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So it doesn't seem that our planned representative from LULAC was able to join us. Is there another LULAC representative who stepped in to fill the role by chance? Okay, well then we'll just move on. Iowa Shares, Holly Hart. Are you on mute, Holly? Okay, that's okay. We will move on to the Johnson County Interfaith Coalition. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I made a mistake. Go ahead.
So we will move on to our another co-sponsor with Johnson County Interfaith Coalition with Peg Bulka, and she will go ahead and ask the question.
Good morning. Thank you, legislators, for being here. I'm Peg Bulka, representing the Johnson County Interfaith Coalition. In Iowa, the rate of gun deaths has increased 56% from 2011 to 2020, compared to a 33% increase nationwide. Right now, Black people are 16 times more likely than white people to die by gun homicide. These statistics are due in large part to the weakening of Iowa's gun safety laws. On November 8th, Iowans will vote on an extreme version of the Second Amendment. The 3 other states with a similar amendment rank in the top 5 for total gun deaths. That's based on average death rate per 100,000 from 2016 to 2020 per everystat.org. Would you advise your constituents to vote for this proposed amendment or against it?
I would, Senator Bulka, Peg, thanks for the question. I would, of course, advise people to vote against it. If we change our constitution to add the language of this proposed gun amendment, it will very likely make it impossible for the legislature to pass any policy that would include things like background checks, for example, and it might strike down any kind of gun safety legislation that's either currently on the books or thought about in the future. This is an enormous issue. We had the shooting over in Des Moines at East High School just in the last couple of weeks here. It's a present danger in every school in Iowa. Over the years, I've introduced lots of different bills. We have a group of people in charge of state government that don't think we need any laws related to guns at all. So it's been a challenge, and they want to put this before voters, and I hope Iowans will educate themselves and make the right vote on this. We could use more gun safety laws, but we certainly don't need to peel away the ones that we have.
I would share Senator Bulka's assessment. Iowa is one of only a handful of states that does not have the federal. So there's the federal Second Amendment about the right to keep and bear arms. And Iowa is one of only a handful of states in our country that does not have that language in our state constitution, presumably because when our founders were writing Iowa's constitution, they fully understood that the Second Amendment at the federal level applied down to the state level. However, gun rights activists are taking advantage of the fact that Iowa is one of the states that does not have that language and are not adding the federal Second Amendment to the Iowa state constitution. As Senator Bulka mentioned, they are taking the federal Second Amendment and then they are souping it up with a quote unquote strict scrutiny standard, which for those of us, including me, who didn't go to law school, essentially means that any laws that would be trying to limit any access to firearms, including things like background checks or needing a permit to carry a handgun, would essentially be much easier to strike down if this amendment goes into the Iowa State Constitution. And so if you vote yes in November for this constitutional amendment, you are voting against background checks. You are voting against any kind of permitting process for handguns or for long guns. You are voting against any restrictions that would go on something like a bump stock, which can convert a semi-automatic weapon into a fully automatic weapon. And so that's what we're voting on in November. The question is not, do you support gun safety or do you oppose gun safety? It's, are you voting for the most reckless version of gun policy in the state, in the history of the state of Iowa? That's what was on the ballot in November.
All right, thank you guys so much. So we are going to go ahead and try again with Iowa Shares and Holly Hart. If you can go ahead and state your question.
Hi, thank you. And I'm having difficulty with my connection, so hopefully this will come through. I was going to ask about another economic issue, which was the unemployment, change in unemployment compensation or eligibility, I guess, or rules that they're coming up. And I know that's been final, not approved yet. The other thing, though, was that I don't think anyone has brought up yet, is the issue of the legislation. And I guess I'm sticking. I'm sorry, I'm able to see. Yeah, I'm sorry, able to. My connection is not working well. I'm assuming that the trans exclusion, I would like to hear comments about what might be the way going forward with this.
Holly, I don't believe we got all of that. If you don't mind writing it either in the chat or through email or through text message, and we will convey your question next, if that's okay. In the meantime, let us move on to Iowa Civil Liberties Council with Martha Hampel.
Hello, good morning. I just wanted to thank the League for all of your work and for continually providing this opportunity for communication between the community and our legislators. Also, many thanks to our representatives for participating this morning. I know there are a couple similar bills, but our question is regarding at least House File 2577. I believe it was renumbered on the 24th. The exact wording of the amended version describes the bill as an act relating to education, including requiring the boards of directors of school districts and the governing boards of charter schools to publish certain specified information, modifying provisions related to required social studies instructions and providing civil penalties. We have heard that this bill would make it possible to ban particular books and materials in schools, and that teachers could face fines or firing for not complying. I received an email yesterday from someone in support of this bill explaining that the bill would only make it possible for parents to request that their own children opt out of reading materials they didn't approve of.
Thank you.
When I look closely at the wording of the bill, that is not how I personally interpret it. Can you please add some clarification on this for us? And also, should this bill pass, what potential implications would this bill have on other processes, protections, and rights in Iowa?
So the bill itself obviously is problematic in terms of how it was actually written. And right now we have requested a fiscal note on it because it is our belief right now that it will cost millions of dollars for districts to be able to publish their curriculum and what they have, what the materials that they're using online. Obviously, parents have every right to know what is being taught in our schools, and every parent has a right to come in and take a look at any of the materials that are being taught. We hope that when students are bringing home their schoolwork, parents are looking at their books and looking at the materials that they're utilizing, and that they're able to see and be a partner in that child's education. Unfortunately, that isn't always happening, and what we're seeing is this attempt to censorship. Censor what is being taught, censor materials, specific books, that kind of thing has been discussed throughout the legislative session. If you remember, there was a senator who wanted to jail teachers for teaching certain books that they felt were pornographic. And again, we're seeing this movement, and we are fighting it tooth and nail. Obviously, we want parents to be engaged and be able to see what students are learning and what they're using for materials, but they don't have the right to censor or tell the rest of the district that they can't utilize that. And so this is a bill that we are trying very hard to kill. Once the fiscal note gets attached and they see what it will cost, we've had estimates anywhere from $27 to $50 million. Districts don't have that kind of money. And a lot of the material that they do have is copyright protected, so they can't put it up online. So again, we're seeing these movements across the state, across the nation, and we are doing everything we can to put a stop to it.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and read Holly Hart's question, who was with Iowa Shares. And we completely understand, Holly. We all can have bad connections with our internet, so very common problem. So her question is, assuming further talk will take up the matter of unemployment benefit changes still under consideration, if no one else raises the question, I would assume further talk will take up the matter of unemployment benefit changes still under consideration. If no one else raises the issue, I would be interested in your thoughts on the recently adopted legislation that will bar trans women from participating in women's sports. How do you think that this will play out? Do you have ideas on what may be done going forward?
Well, on the unemployment issue, this is a really important question. So essentially, Iowa for a long time has had a very strong unemployment system. So if someone experiences a layoff or their business shuts down or their plant has a temporary suspension, if you work, you earn an unemployment benefit that helps supplement your income during that period of not having full-time employment. What Republicans are proposing is essentially a few different things. First, removing that protection if the business is shut down. Second, shortening the amount of time that your benefits last from 26 weeks to 16 weeks. Third, eliminating benefits in the very first week that you're experiencing unemployment. And then some additional, more technical changes, but that essentially continue to stack the deck against people, Iowans who have been laid off. The sum total of all of these changes, as it was currently debated in the Iowa Senate, and the Republicans in the Iowa House have a slightly different version. The sum total of all of this is that over the next decade, the state of Iowa, if we move forward with the changes that went out of the Iowa Senate, would take $1 billion out of the pockets of Iowans who are out of work and hand it over to some of the largest and wealthiest and most profitable corporations in our state. $1 billion with a B from people who desperately need that money because they are experiencing unemployment, taking it from them at the time that they need it the most and giving it to these big businesses. And again, I want to stress, this is an earned benefit. We're not talking about public money or taxpayer money per se. This is a benefit that you have to earn by working. The governor's description of this benefit as being some kind of a hammock is disrespectful, out of touch, short-sighted, and just, I mean, incredibly insulting to the people of this state.
All right. Thank you so much. So we are now going to
And the one thing I would add just briefly to the question about transgender girls and women participating in sports, I think the next step is that there will be litigation. And this is ultimately a question that will be decided in the legal system, in the judicial system, because I think that there is a very real question as to whether or not this bill is constitutional.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. So now we will go to our last co-sponsor, and that is the Center for Worker Justice with Charlie Eastman.
Thank you, Dua. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. In 2016, Ed Cole, Justin Doyle, Kevin Munson, and Jeff Maxwell formed the North Dubuque Limited Liability Company and bought a large swath of land, including the Forest View Mobile Home Park, with the intention of creating a large commercial development. This is all taking place in Iowa City. As soon as they learned of the sale, residents united in the Forest View Tenants Association to ensure that any development that destroyed the Forest View neighborhood would include new affordable housing, as a condition of its zoning, and to protect hardworking but underpaid families who make up the Forest View mobile home community who would otherwise be forced to relocate. The owner's progress on the commercial development has since been marked by chaos, while housing and living conditions in the Forest View mobile home park have dangerously deteriorated. Now the owners say they cannot live up to their requirements to build a new neighborhood and replace what is being destroyed. Residents have done their part to help each other. The city is doing its part. My questions is, tell us how you would make sure a new neighborhood is developed so that residents will continue to live together as a community in safe and affordable homes.
Charlie, you might want to give us a little more background, because I remember when this was originally discussed, and it was my understanding that there was going to be an apartment complex or some kind of a housing unit that was going to be built nearby, not obviously in the same location, but in a nearby location. Why has that not moved forward? I don't know if there are city, I thought there were city ordinances that they had supported and were going about in terms of getting the permits to build that. What has been the holdup? I don't quite understand what happened locally to prevent that from moving forward.
Well, in short, Mary, the owners have said that they're not going to fulfill their obligations for that zoning requirement. The zoning requirement will remain. The owners can't do anything with their property as it stands now without fulfilling their requirement. If the property is sold, new owners would have to fulfill that requirement also. But as it stands right now, the owners have said they're not going to pursue developing a new neighborhood, and the living conditions that people are living in the park right now are unacceptable.
Can the city do anything to hold their feet to the fire and have them fulfill a promise that was made or a commitment?
The city can prevent them from doing the overall development. That's the city's power. And the city can, in our view, step in and do the development of the new neighborhood using a combination of financial methods. And our question this morning for you, for the state legislatures, is what assistance can you provide to the city and the community to fulfill the residents' needs?
So Charlie, what I would say is there's the Housing Trust Fund that we have in terms of affordable housing projects. And Iowa City and our community has utilized those dollars at the state level really well. We've got good grant writers locally, and they have been stepping up to the plate and obviously working with our community to bring those grant dollars into Iowa City and Johnson County. And so I would hope that would continue. We would like to see more money put into those programs, because this is not just an urban issue. We have some of the highest housing costs in the state in terms of the cost of living in Johnson County. And that creates some enormous problems. Part of it is because we're a university community and students are willing to pay those high rents, but it also cuts out of the market a lot of those people who are low income folks who need that housing as well. And so that's where we run into some of the issues and problems, but putting more money into the Housing Trust Fund would be one way to address that.
Yeah, Charlie, I spoke briefly to some of the challenges that we faced in the legislature around trying to strengthen protections for Iowans who live in mobile or manufactured homes. We also, to Mary's point, last year were able to work with Republicans to double the investment that the state makes into affordable housing trust funds, not just in our community, but across the state, which has had a very beneficial effect for our local affordable housing trust fund and for those organizations across Iowa. I would also just mention briefly, I know the city has been working relentlessly on this issue for, I think, nearly 6 years now. I'm happy to reach out to Jeff and see if there's anything additionally that we could do at the state level to try and give them tools or flexibility. Unfortunately, as you well know, local control has become a dirty word with Republicans controlling the state house in Des Moines. And so they have really hampered the ability of cities, counties, school boards to make their own decisions and taken tools out of their toolbox when it comes to these kinds of policy-making tools. So I'll reach out to Jeff as soon as we get back to session here on Monday and see what we're able to do. Unfortunately, I think this is likely something that will have to be resolved at the city level, and I'm not sure what additional work that we'll be able to do at the state level, just given the current political dynamics. I wish I had better news.
Well, actually, that's to me, that's a reasonable response, Zach. I think reaching out to the city and encouraging and supporting local options that we have for financing would be very beneficial.
I'll be in touch.
All right, so we will also start asking questions from the audience. So we will accept questions from the audience. Please enter your question into the chat window and it will be read by the moderator. All legislators will have the opportunity to respond to each question. Legislators each have 2 minutes to respond. Out of respect for all present, please do not interrupt the speakers. All right, and so our first question is, what bills currently hold the highest priority and why?
This is Senator Bulka. Let me start. We're ready to adjourn like tomorrow, if we could. The unfinished business is the budget. So I would have to say, churning through the various budget bills that we're going to see in the next couple of weeks is probably the top priority to get done. There's a number of things that are still out there, a lot of bad stuff still out there. And the sooner we adjourn, the sooner we can put that stuff on the shelf and move on to the fall elections.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There are plenty of bad bills that are still out there, including the governor's attempt to privatize our state's public education system by introducing a vouchers program. There are continuing attempts by Republicans to continue scrutinizing the work that our educators do in the classroom every day, whether it's threatening them with jail time. Thankfully, some of these bills have died. The idea that we're going to put a camera in every room, and some of these other quote unquote transparency matters that are really all about just trying to drive teachers out of the profession are hopefully not going to be moving forward. But the sooner that we adjourn, the better. If any of you were ever fans of Game of Thrones, you're familiar with the expression, what is dead may never die. And that applies 100% to the legislature. So nothing's truly dead until we have gavelled out and we're headed home. One thing that I would say that we're also going to be keeping a very close eye on is what happens at the federal level with the U.S. Supreme Court and potentially the overturning of the Roe versus Wade decision. If that decision is handed down by the Supreme Court in June, or not just the Roe decision, but potentially also undermining the Casey decision, we have really serious concerns about what Republicans might do, potentially calling us back into a special session to try and pass more extreme restrictions on abortion access in our state. We've done some good things this session. One of the bills that I don't know if the governor signed it yet, but that will move forward is essentially making sure that our school buildings are able to test for radon and hopefully try to lower levels of radon in our schools. We know that radon exposure has really negative effects on young people and on teachers who are in those buildings. And so there are, a handful of good bipartisan things that have happened this year, and I think we're seeing some of these questions here in the chat. There are a lot of very negative things that have happened as well.
And I was just going to comment that normally we have joint budget targets between the House and the Senate, and they identify what the target is in terms of the dollars that will be spent for education, for human services, for the judicial branch and justice. All of those bills will have a target, and usually the House and the Senate agree on that target, and then there's negotiations that happen between the two chambers. We do not have joint targets this year. The House is starting all of the budget bills. They are sending them over to the Senate without any agreements. And so needless to say, those bills will look very different when they bounce back to the House, and then we have to debate them or take them up again. So it slows the process down in light of the fact that we don't have those joint efforts in terms of a compromise on what the targets actually will be. There are a number of bills that are still floating out there. We hope a lot of them die. And as Zach said, they aren't dead until we adjourn. And so the sooner we get out of there, the better right now. The bottle bill is still out there. And obviously that is a bill that has been in the Ways and Means Committee. It passed out of the Ways and Means Committee and will be a bill that I think will be debated on the floor of the House within this next week or two. They're talking about getting out on April 9th, but we're also hearing it will be the following week. So we'll see what happens, but it means that the leadership in the House and the Senate need to come together, come up with what their agreements will be, and then obviously we can get our work done and finish up and adjourn.
All right, thank you, legislators. All right, so the second question from the audience is, the League helped pass the original bottle bill in the late 1970s and has reviewed and commented on many recent proposals for solutions. Iowa State University economist Dr. Dermot Hayes has studied the bill and recommended a 3-cent handling fee. Why are lawmakers limiting the handling fee, and why limit the higher fee only to redemption centers? Why aren't dealers or retailers offered this fee? Thank you.
Hi, I think I put an answer to that in the chat. The bottle bill is a moving target. The Senate has offered the 3 cents handling fee. The House has a different structure on the handling fee. I think that we will be doing a lot of negotiating next week to see if we can come to some kind of agreement somewhere between 1 cent and 3 cents. Just keep paying attention, I guess. Keep sending us your thoughts and comments. But as of right now, anything is up for change and up for negotiation.
Amy, can you talk about some of the provisions in the bill in terms of what it does to the grocers and that? Because I think people might be interested in finding out some of the specifics.
Sure. So one of the big parts of the bill is allowing the certain retailers to opt out of accepting the cans. I know that is something that is not necessarily popular, but it is going to be something that in my opinion, stays. that they can opt out, but then we also have different mechanisms for redeeming your cans. The promotion of the mobile redemption centers. I think the Senate maybe has in their version allowing distributors to become redemption centers. Let's see, there's a lot in there. The handling fees in the House, it's a 1 cent increase for dealers, retailers, a 1 cent increase for non-alcoholic beverages, and then a 0.5 cent increase in handling fee, which is actually a tax credit to the barrel tax for alcoholic beverages. The reason for the tax credit to the barrel tax is we have no way of knowing how much those distributors are keeping in unredeemed monies. Supposedly, there's no way that they can figure that out and let us know. In my opinion, that is not true. So by doing it this way, we would be able to keep track of the unredeemed monies that the alcoholic distributors are being able to keep. One of the things that I recently was talking to my Republican colleagues about is ABD is technically the alcoholic beverage division. The state is technically a distributor, and I have to stop and think, because they're changing the names of like retailers, dealers, retailer, agent, and all of these different things. But the state does distribute alcohol, and so they also have unredeemed monies, and so there is some talk about having either all of it, half of it, put back into the state's budget for different, nonprofit programs that we have. I think the homeless housing assistance program, which helps people who are, trying to move from, being unhoused to getting into a place where they can, where they can stay and they can live. Things to help with environmental issues, like the Adopt a Highway programs to help make sure that we're not seeing increase in littering, and
Okay.
A couple other things. So I'm sure I've gone over 2 minutes.
Yep. And just a reminder, legislators, that you only have 2 minutes to answer the question. But Joe, would you like to go?
Pretty big answer for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'd be happy to say a few things. I mean, the bottle bill is basically unraveling, right? It's because we have Hy-Vee and Fairway and these convenience stores that have quit taking bottles and cans, and they're essentially breaking the law without any kind of oversight from the state. If this were left up to legislators to solve, we would solve this issue. Unfortunately, this bill has been hijacked once again by powerful special interests. It reminds me of Sarah Barron's question about the landlords and our ability to do anything about that. We have the beer and pop distributors who are making a fortune off of unclaimed bottles and cans because the redemption rate has plummeted because it's so hard to return a bottle or can, is up, and they're suggesting maybe up to $50 million is going unclaimed. Those nickels, it's kind of a tax without a service, right? When people recycle their cans, they expect them to be recycled and reused in some format going down the road. And unfortunately, this solution, just adding a couple cents to the handling fee, is good for the 60 redemption centers that currently exist in Iowa, but it is going to fall way short of trying to replace or stand up a standalone redemption operation in Iowa, if in fact we're going to let retailers like Hy-Vee and Fairway off the hook for collecting cans and bottles. So the bill that we see is a special interest bill. It's preventing us from getting to this $50 million, which could be the money that would set up a new third-party redemption center. So the bill that we saw in the Senate actually have changed. We saw a decent bill on Wednesday with an attempt to get after some of that unclaimed money. The next day, the amendment that was run in the Senate actually had a cut in the excise tax for beer, in addition to having just a lousy bill, a bill that's essentially going to result in the bottle bill unraveling as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so our next question will be, what can we do to get the press back on the Senate floor?
Great question. So, unfortunately, the majority leader, Jack Whitver, essentially gets to make those decisions unilaterally. So the best thing that you can do is elect a Democratic majority. And I'll tell you that as majority leader, I will make sure that we get the press back on press row. I've also taken to starting a Monday morning, essentially press briefing, where I meet with the press up in the gallery and just take their questions. And we talk for usually about 30 minutes about what's going on for the upcoming week and what have you. We've also really stepped up our outreach to the press to try and make sure that they're fully informed about the amendments that we're running on various Republican bills, and that they're staying in the loop as best as we can. Given that we can't just walk over literally on the floor and explain what's going on in the way that we used to be able to. I still run up to the gallery, which is where the press are now posted, usually at least once or twice a day, to just check in on various things, in addition to the Monday mornings and in addition to all of the outreach that we're doing proactively. So I think that the press, obviously, and we would like them back on the floor, they would like to be back on the floor, but I do think that all things considered, they feel like they're, at least from us, getting a fair bit of information. The real problem is on the Republican side, where they basically just keep the press completely in the dark and don't talk to them about what they're doing. So that's where the real problem is. And unfortunately, as long as Republicans have the majority, the majority gets their way. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you so much. So we will go on to the next audience question. So the next one is, the 2020 pandemic relief package gave every family with children a set amount of money on a monthly basis, irrespective of income. It lifted a large percentage of families out of poverty. It reduced the need to verify sources of income, savings, etc., before assistance was granted. Poverty is a huge problem that limits progress in almost everything else: adequate housing, reliable transportation, food security, health. Would you support establishing a more permanent grant program to be offered by the state of Iowa?
I'm happy to take a stab at that. Donna, great question. The child tax credit was a huge boost for a huge number of families at a time where they really needed the help. Today, obviously, that program has expired, and I think that there are ongoing conversations about how to bring it back in a potentially means-tested way from the federal government. I'd say two things. First of all, Iowa Republicans have no interest in helping working class or low-income families, so they certainly won't do that as long as they have the majority. And the second thing is that Republicans have enacted a massive tax cut that overwhelmingly benefits the ultra-rich, that will really handicap the ability of future state governments to try and enact that kind of a policy in the future without reversing those tax cuts, which would take some time and political effort. So Republicans have given not just ultra-rich individuals, but also large corporations very significant tax cuts this year. Democrats supported middle-class tax cuts that would have benefited folks who are not in that highest ultra-rich tier or big corporations, but unfortunately, those were defeated certainly in the Senate on a party line vote. And Mary, Amy, I don't know if you had a similar amendment in the House. Democrats, on the other hand, look at the very significant budget surplus that we have, which is largely the result of federal dollars from the American Rescue Plan, and think that the best way to use that surplus is not to give the ultra-rich yet another tax cut, but instead to invest that specifically into our public education system, which is one of the most important tools that we have to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty and give young people opportunity to lead a better life than their parents. Republicans voted our amendments on that subject down, preferring to spend that money on more tax cuts for the ultra wealthy in our state. So there's a very clear contrast in visions for the future of Iowa, whether we want to become, the next Kansas, or whether we want to get back to the Iowa values that have defined the state since our founding.
We would also need a different governor if we were going to do this. This governor does not support our families, does not support low-income Iowans, does not support people who are struggling. We know that. So if people want to see changes, that's what elections are about. And that's why we need to elect people who do support those kinds of initiatives. And right now, we do not have the majority in the House or Senate, and we don't have a governor who supports those kinds of programs. And until we do, we're not going to be able to see those kinds of things move forward. Obviously, there is an attempt, and Zach talked about it, at the federal government to enact that and to make it permanent. But again, there would be means testing. So the people who need it the most would be the ones who would be eligible for it. And unfortunately, that has been stalled at the federal level too. And we all know why. Obviously, they don't have the votes to get it through right now either. And that's unfortunate because it has helped so many people. And it is something that, again, really helps our working families.
All right, thank you. All right, so we will move on to our next question and then another final question. So President Biden announced yesterday that the United States would welcome 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. Is there anything that needs to happen with the state budget to support that effort? I get that impression that local agencies already have their hands full with the Afghan refugees.
Well, I hope that the state extends a hand to refugees from Ukraine. I mean, that's who we are. That's what we do. We should help people in need. Selfishly, we need more people in Iowa. I mean, the state needs more bodies, more people to contribute to make our state even a better place. The governor has at her disposal several hundred million, probably $700 million of American Rescue Act money available. I don't think that the state does not have a shortage of resources and could invest some of our $2 billion surplus or some of that ARP money. It's just whether or not the governor has a will to do it. I think that you'd find bipartisan support in the legislature if there were a proposal potentially to put resources in that area. Yeah. Oddly enough, the state relies on the federal government for all the funding we have to assist refugees in their settlement. We put up a couple $100,000 to a very small program for the state, but we rely on federal funding to staff all the refugee work we do in Iowa, and it's time for the state probably to make a bigger investment.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so our next question is, where is the support for small businesses in either the House or Senate?
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Absolutely. Where is the support for small businesses in either the House or Senate?
It's a great question. There was a tax bill that the Senate just passed this past week that had some really good stuff in it, including creating sales tax exemptions for period products, for adult and child diapers, and some other specific areas. But it also included a tax increase on computer and peripheral electronic equipment that is going to hamper small businesses. And it's going to make it more expensive for especially small businesses to invest in the technology that they need to get started. And so, I think that this is a Republican-controlled legislature that is much more focused on big businesses than it is on small ones. We haven't really, I wouldn't say, seen a small business agenda from this Republican legislature. I think that there are things that we could be doing to support small businesses, which, by the way, are the largest source of employment in our state. But I think that this legislature has been much more focused on providing large tax breaks to big corporations rather than small ones.
Anyone else? Okay. So, all right. So I think we will wrap up now. So thanks to all of you, those with questions and those with responses, for an informative session. Thanks also to our co-sponsors, Center for Worker Justice, Iowa Civil Liberties Council, Johnson County Interfaith Coalition, Iowa Shares, and the LULAC Council 308, and to the local television staff for recording this event and live streaming it to the League's page. Rebroadcast of this forum will be run on Iowa City Channel 4, Coral Vision, and North Liberty TV. See the respective websites for programming. So we do have a future event, and that is the League of Women Voters Johnson County. It's sponsoring an event on April 21st at 7 p.m. Our guest speaker is Temple Hyatt on understanding the proposed right to firearms amendment. This is a virtual event, so please watch the League's Facebook page and website for registration information, and watch for our candidate forum series later this spring and our legislative forums beginning again in January of 2023. Thank you guys so much and have a great weekend.